am Scott, I am the Uncensored Chef. Welcome to my kitchen, and tonight is something I've wanted to do for a really long time, and it seems like the time is right. It is back to school tomorrow for my son. It is my wife's birthday tomorrow as well, so what better way to celebrate all these things, and it was only 2 degrees above zero the other morning, so it really started to feel like fall. So we're going to tie all that together, and we are going to make a very fall flavor forward cheesecake today. That's right. We are going to make cheesecake. Now, when I say fall flavor forward, what we're going to do is I happen to have some really nice nectarines right now that we're going to make kind of a jam. It's not a jam in the sense of we're adding gelatin or bringing that kind of texture to anything, but what we're going to do is we are going to add some really great flavors, a lot of really nice warm spice fall flavors, and kind of bring a mulled wine kind of feel to this whole thing. So, first thing we're going to start with are just some nectarines. So I have 4 very nice ripe nectarines here. Now I'm just going to take a very nice, simple, small knife and right down the hemisphere of the actual nectarine, because it has that natural nice little split line. All I'm going to do is I'm just going to roll these guys over, and we're going to slice them right in half, because we're going to dig the pits out of these guys. Alright, so we get it all the way around, and then we're just going to twist slowly to pull the nectarine apart. Now if you counter a little bit of resistance, just slow it down, and it will come out really nicely without ripping too much of the skin. Now obviously if you have incredibly ripe nectarines, there's a good chance you can slip them right out of the skin. But that didn't happen here, and that's alright, because we actually don't need to take the skin off of these guys. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to run my knife around the pit, very simply all the way around, and we're just going to pull that pit right out. And we're just going to do that on all 4 of these very nice nectarines. Now, nectarines are absolutely one of my favorite summer stone fruits. I'm a big fan of all summer stone fruits, since obviously, especially living here in Canada, the season that we get them is very limited. Peaches, cherries, plums, nectarines, apricots, all of those amazing, amazing summer stone fruits are absolutely just flavors I truly, truly enjoy. So I try to incorporate them as much as possible when we have them in season. And nectarines, being one of the last kind of stone fruits we get at the end of the summer season into the fall changeover, are perfect for this dish. So we pull the pits out, get those out of the way. Now all I'm going to do, once again, take my knife, we're going to split that nectarine in half to make quarters, and then we are just going to run my knife just all the way down, just to make nice little segments so we can cook these guys down really, really nicely. So we're just going to get all of these really nicely cut up here. Now, the wonderful thing about what we're going to do here is, I guess really I shouldn't have called it a jam. It's more like a nectarine butter, in the sense of like an apple butter. So we're going to add some liquid, some spices, a little bit of sweetness, and we're going to cook this down, and then we're going to puree it. We're going to mash it up really nicely. So the nice thing about this is that nectarine skins are tender enough that we don't actually have to peel any of these nectarines. We can just add them in whole. So we're just going to clean our knife there. Now I'm going to take all of this right over here. I've got a pot on. I've just started heating it up a little bit. It's just going to get those guys warm right off the bat before we kind of start doing adding everything else in there. Just wipe my board down just a little bit. Now let's see. All right. So now you can kind of hear that sizzling just a little bit. Now we're going to add a few things to make this even better. Now, the first thing I'm going to add is I'm going to add 1/4 cup of just white sugar. Now, I know, white sugar. Honestly, don't be afraid of white sugar. Just don't overuse it, but you don't have to be afraid. You don't have to be afraid of it. Now, the next thing we're going to add in here is we're going to add a little bit of cinnamon and nutmeg. So for the cinnamon, we're going to add what looks like a lot of cinnamon. Okay? Now, this seems like more, and it's going to kind of smell like more than it really kind of comes across flavor-wise. But we're going to add an entire teaspoon of cinnamon right into there. We're going to follow that up with some fresh ground nutmeg. Now, if you have never seen nutmeg is a nut. When you grate it over a microplane, that's what it looks like inside. It is absolutely one of my favorite designs in all of nature. It's absolutely gorgeous. So that's the inside of the nutmeg. So most nutmegs come at about this size. So I'm going to tell you to use half of one nutmeg. So to give a little bit of reference, there's my thumb. That's your nutmeg. You're going to use half of this. Now, the easiest way to deal with this is with a microplane. Now, I've used this before. This is something that most people who have watched me should be familiar with. Now, all we're going to do is we're going to take this nut, we're going to put this right over top, and we're just going to grate this back and forth. Now, what I love about nutmeg is it also imparts a slight citrus aroma and flavor wherever you put it in. So, and it also kind of creates this beautiful kind of warming sensation as well. So, we used about half of that nutmeg nut. So we've got that rolling in there now, very nicely. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add the liquid. And we're going to add some port. Now, port is a delicious fortified wine. It's nice and sweet, and it reduces and really, really adds a lot of nice flavor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 1/2 of a cup of port, and we're going to pour that right in. Now again, this will cook off all the alcohol. And right now, it is going to smell a little on the alcohol-y side, simply because we are not burning off of the alcohol, we're going to boil it out. So it's going to smell a little stronger than it tastes for sure. Now, to just add a touch more liquid, just to make our syrup really nice and stable, we're going to add 1/4 cup of water into this mixture as well. Now, at this point in time, all we're going to do with this is we are going to crank the heat all the way to high. We're going to stir this around. We're going to incorporate all that beautiful spices and the sugar directly into that liquid. And now we are going to let this come to a raging boil, and we're going to let this reduce. So once this comes up, and you can already, like, if you were here, the aroma that comes off of this is, it smells like Christmas, actually, honestly. It has a mulled wine kind of vibe to it with the cinnamon, the nutmeg, the little bit of sugar. Really, the only thing this is missing is a little bit of clove and allspice to make and orange peel, actually, to make this basically mulled wine. And really, the citrus from the nectarine and again that nutmeg is really going to highlight those flavors and really kind of bring a little bit more of that kind of mulled wine vibe to this whole thing. So this is going to come up to a boil, and we're going to let it simmer. We're going to let it reduce. And while that's happening, during that evaporation process, luckily for us, alcohol evaporates quicker than water, so the alcohol is going to boom itself right out of there nice and quick, so this is going to be safe for anybody to eat. Now, little asterisk beside that, anybody pregnant, anybody becoming pregnant, anybody think they might be pregnant, anything that you cook alcohol in, you cannot reduce the alcohol content to 0.00%. That is not possible. There's always a 0.01% trace of alcohol left at the very end. There's always just a little bit. So if you're super, super hyper concerned or hyper sensitive towards alcohol, you can replace this with a mixture of a little bit of grape juice and apple juice, actually, to kind of get the same flavor notes as you would with the mulled wine. But again, you are going to boil off 99.99% of that alcohol. So for the general public, for most people, for kids, this is fine. There isn't enough alcohol content to actually affect anybody. But if it's something you're super hypersensitive to, just please be aware of that. That's going to be my little disclaimer for the alcohol thing. So back to this real quick. We have this up to a really nice boil now, and it is just, the aroma in here is absolutely splendid. My neighbors are going to be jealous because boy does it ever smell good. So now we're just going to let that reduce down, and we're going to let it become really nice and goopy and syrupy, and it is just going to become this awesome butter-like substance that we are going to add to our cheesecake. So we're going to let that reduce. We're going to come back over to our main table here, and we are going to get into the next part of our cheesecake building. Get rid of these spices over here for 1 second. Now, the next part of the cheesecake that we are going to build is going to be the crust. So, the crust is absolutely as integral and important of a part of making your cheesecake as anything else. Luckily, it's simple. It's very, very, very easy. Now, I have a really simple, basic set of ingredients here that we're going to combine. We're going to make this crust. Now, I'll show you a little secret here. This is where this recipe is coming from, okay? This little book. Now, you may notice the wonderful dinosaur stickers that my son adhered to. But this little book here, I'll give you a little glimpse. So you can screen grab that. That's the actual recipe for both sides of what we're making. The jam is the only thing that's not in there. Now, anything that comes out of this little book means that this is a restaurant tried, tested, and true recipe. All my little books like this are all contain restaurant recipes from chefs that have allowed me to, I guess, take or have the recipe that they've worked years on developing. The wonderful thing about our community is that we're very willing to share and very willing to bring other people into our world and kind of share what we know, and that's what we're doing here. So this is a restaurant recipe. So what we have here, just to go over it, we've got 260 grams of graham crumbs. I've got 95 grams of white sugar, and I have 75.5 grams of unsalted whole butter. The butter, this is going to go into the microwave for 30 seconds. All we want to do is we want to soften it. We do not want it completely melted to the point that it's bubbling in the microwave. We just want it nice and soft. Now, graham crumbs in the bowl, sugar, we're going to add that right in there as well. This cheesecake itself is not incredibly sweet. A lot of the sweetness that we bring in comes directly from the crust a little bit with the sugar and the butter. So I'm just going to take a fork, and we're going to move these crumbs around. We're just going to incorporate the sugar directly into the crumbs. Now, I like using a fork because it helps aerate everything. It really lets the two combine nicely. So my sugar just beat, or sorry, my butter just beat. And as you can see, we're melted, but we're not 100% liquefied. There is still a little bit of solid butter in here. Now, again, I'm just going to take that same fork. I'm just going to mix all that butter in together so it's nice and melted, all nice and liquidy now, but we're not super crazy hot right now. Now, that butter into the mix. Get all of that in there. And now, once again, I'm going to go back to my fork. And we're just going to use my fork to move the butter through the crumbs and the sugar. Now, what that's going to do is it's going to help, again, distribute all that fat around all those crumbs and get a nice, even distribution. You can use your fork to mash up the bigger bits. You can use it to kind of rub off all the stuff off the sides. You get all that butter work really, really nicely directly into your crumbs. Give it a little toss there. Again, get all that butter in there really nice and tight, making sure it's all incorporated. So now you can see that we have a little bit of clumping. The fat is evenly distributed all the way through. It kind of looks like a really nice sandy beach right now, and that is exactly what we're looking for. Because the key to this, the butter is there just to help things adhere. All it is that it's just going to help everything bind up. So before we get into that, again, I'm just going to dip back over here to my jam, or my butter, because it is simmering nicely. Oh, look at that. So again, you can see those bubbles are starting to really kind of stay a little bit more formed when they reach the top. That means that our reduction is coming up to a point that it's going to be just absolutely syrupy and delicious. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my spatula, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of start mashing we're just going to mash those nectarines down just a little bit because I want to get as much of that juice out of there. So I really want to pull the flavor of the nectarine into all that liquid. So we are just going to let that keep reducing down. And that's getting really, really, really nice and close and almost ready for us to puree out. So, crust time. Back to the table. Now, thanks to the magic of television, a springform pan full of parchment paper. Now, this is probably, actually no, not probably, this is the single most difficult part of making your cheesecake, is lining your pan. That's why I pre-did it, because I don't want to fumble around and look like a butt. This is kind of funny. So, really all you do, so springform pan, you have the bottom part that can come out after you unsnap the side and it opens up the ring. That bottom part, what you want to do is you want to lay out some parchment paper, put that circle on there, and you want to draw a circle around it slightly away from the actual piece, because you want the actual insert a little bit bigger so it climbs up the sides. Once you've drawn your circle, you're going to take a pair of good scissors or a knife and you're going to cut just outside that circle all the way around. Again, so you have that just a little bit extra. Now, on the sides of this springform pan, all this is just parchment that my parchment paper is fairly wide. So I've rolled it into thirds to create a really nice lip. I pinch that in to the bottom with the round piece, and then I push my insert onto the top of it. Now, the beauty about using parchment like this is you have zero need to spray this with any kind of spray oil or fat. You don't need anything extra in here. This is perfect as it is. So, crust. Now that we've got everything all nice and mashed in there, all that butter is incorporated, our graham crackers are looking absolutely delicious, we are simply going to put our crust, all of it, into the bottom. Again, initially, use your fork to move it all around. Now, you're going to push it towards the sides, and this is what is going to seal your bottom piece of parchment kind of to the rest of your pan. So again, we're just going to line that just a little bit. Get this guy out of the way. I'm just going to turn my jam down because we've reached a beautiful state over there. Now, time to get your hands dirty. So, using the top parts of your fingers and going in with your hands. You're going to take your hands and you are simply going to push kind of like this and press with the back of your hands onto the bottom of the crust. Now, the reason that we like using the bottoms of our hands, especially like this, is that you can get right up to the lip and you can adhere the crust to the sides of the lip of your pan. Now, this is going to form that nice barrier that when we pour the cheesecake mix over top of that, it means it's not going to slip underneath our crust and it's not going to mess with our pan. So again, we're just going to take this and we're going to be very methodical about it, and you're going to use nice pressure, and you're going to kind of use the other part of your hand, and push against the pan to provide counter pressure. And you're just going to kind of go all the way around. Now, I don't personally like a huge tall crust. I just like it for stability. So what we're really going to do here is we're going to make sure that that crust is just barely coming up the side, but that it is coming up the side, again, to prevent any of that cheesecake from going underneath. And then all we're going to do is we're really just going to make sure that the bottom is really pressed down. Now, you want this packed as tight as you can do it, because you don't want any movement on your crust after you cut it. So after this bakes, you want that crust to be nice and solid so that when you bring your knife through it, you're not going to get a split on your crust. And that can unfortunately ruin your cheesecake. So that right there is exactly what we're looking for as far as how high. And again, I'm only going about this high up the side of the lip. We're not taking it really high up the sides. I'm just going to rinse off my fingers here real quick. It looks like we are ready to do some blitzing over here. So, our jam or our butter, keep calling it jam, we have reduced down to a really nice syrup consistency. So our liquid is really nice and drippy. So I have a 2-cup measuring cup that I am just going to put this into, because this way it gives me a nice amount of volume so I can play around with it, so I can blitz this down really nicely. So we're just going to get all that beautiful liquid out of there, because that's the money. That's the real flavor of all this cheesecake. Cheesecake itself tastes like cheese. It tastes like cream cheese. It doesn't taste like a lot. It's all about kind of what you add with it and kind of where your flavor profiles go. So now that we have that in there, it's as simple as, for me, as always, my best friend, Mr. Immersion Blender. We're going to put him right down in here, sink him in there, and we are going to blend. As you can see, once you start breaking that down, the liquid inside the nectarines really kind of opens this up, really softens this up into a absolutely stunning texture. Just look at that. And look at that color. It looks like pumpkin pie, but it's a little bit sweeter, a little bit more citrusy. Now that, by itself, you could just put that on a bagel. You could put that on toast. A little cinnamon toast with that on top. Oh, baby, man, you are having a good time. But what we're going to do is I'm going to really quickly pop this in my freezer just to cool it down while we make the cheesecake filling. So, the next part of our wonderful journey is the actual cheesecake filling itself. So, how do we make cheesecake filling? Well, cheesecake filling is very simple. And again, this is a restaurant style recipe, and I have to keep reiterating that, because when you're going to look at other recipes, you're going to see how many eggs are in this recipe, and it might kind of freak you out a little bit. But again, this is a restaurant recipe. This is tried, this is tested, it's true, it works so incredibly well. And the lightness of this cheesecake means you can eat half a cheesecake and not feel super terrible. Well, you might feel, especially if you're lactose intolerant, but I suggest it anyway. So, into the cheesecake, into the cream cheese. Now, we're using 3 250-gram blocks of Philadelphia cream cheese. Hey, Philadelphia, you should sponsor me. What? Who said that? I don't know. That sounded like a ghost. Now, this cream cheese has been sitting at room temperature for about an hour. Now, the reason that I like to have my cream cheese out for at least an hour before we start getting into this is I want it to start a little bit more soft, because we are going to cream this with the sugar before we get the eggs in there. And if you're starting with really cold, right out of the fridge cream cheese, this is a very painful process to do this. So like I said, we are going to take cream cheese. This has been out for about an hour, just up to room temperature, just to take that really kind of heavy edge off of it. Because we've all had that. We've all gotten into the cream cheese and it's been in the fridge a little bit too long, and you can't barely put your knife in it, never mind get it into the bowl and get it creamed with some sugar. So, what you do, make sure you just take it out a little bit. Again, that's 750 grams total of cream cheese. Now, I'm just going to get rid of some of this packaging here. Out of the way. Now, the one thing I will say, and as I just previously stated, I am not sponsored by them whatsoever. Please use brand name cream cheese. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, Philadelphia cream cheese cannot be beat when it comes to making cheesecake. It has that beautiful texture. There's a reason that you pay a little bit more money for it. It is absolutely worth it. I'll say that outright. It is absolutely worth a little bit of extra money you're going to pay for it. Generally, if you use a off-brand or a lesser brand of cream cheese, you are going to have to add a little bit of sour cream to bring the texture to where it is with this type of cream cheese. So, again, sponsor me, Philadelphia. I like your product. All right, so cream in. So we've got our cream cheese in. Now we're going to lock that down. we're going to take all of our sugar. I have 190 grams of sugar. That's going to go right in. All my sugar. All of my sugar, love. Because we love some sugar. Now, and realistically, remember, this is 750 grams of cream cheese. To that, we only added 190 grams of sugar. This is not a ton of sugar. And on top of that, as we cream this, we are going to add 10 eggs. Yes, 10 eggs. So it's going to elongate this. It's going to really kind of draw that sweetness out, which is awesome. So we're going to start this up again on low. All we want right now is we just want to incorporate that cream cheese and that sugar. Just very, very gently. We're going to bring it up to the second level. While that's going on, I've got 10 eggs. What we're going to do here is we are just simply going to crack 10 eggs into this bowl, because what we're going to do is we are going to very slowly, once this is all creamed together with the cheese and the sugar, we're going to very slowly drop these eggs one by one out of the bowl into the mix to allow them to fully incorporate nice and slowly. Now, the one beautiful thing about this recipe is this particular portion of this recipe, the mix, the cream cheese mixture, you cannot overmix this. You can't overmix it. You could let this thing go for 45 minutes. You will not overmix it, which is a blessing, because there are some recipes where overmixing does not take a lot of effort. So, number 9, number 10, and there are my eggs. Get that out of the way. Now, taking a look in our bowl. So we've got some really nice creamy cream cheese action. I'm just going to scrape down my bowl, get everything off of there and into the bowl itself. Get all that off there. Oh yeah. All of it. All of it. All right. Now, lock that bowl back up. We're going to turn that on. Right now, we got that on the lowest setting. Now, this is where, sweet cream cheese, this is where we're going to start adding our eggs very slowly. Now, again, the beautiful thing of eggs. Look at that. You think that's one big bowl of eggs? No, that's actually a bowl of 10 individual eggs that just look like they are all one giant egg. As you pour, the eggs will naturally pour themselves out in individual pieces. So we're just going to let this very slowly incorporate in. Now you can absolutely watch this. You can watch it happen. It's going to get shiny. You're going to see the eggs, the yolk break, and then you're going to see it disappear. That's when you're going to be able to drop your next one in. And again, we're just going to let that very slowly incorporate the eggs. Once the egg that's in there is about 75-80% incorporated, we can drop our next one in and just repeat this process for all 10 eggs. And again, you want to take your time here. This is all about taking your time and making sure that you are getting this done methodically and properly. Because this is your base. This is where all of your texture and all of your flavor is coming from. Besides the fact that we made a flavoring component, the main flavor of this is this cheesecake base, which by itself, again, is kind of plain, but it has its very unique flavor. It's a flavor that people really enjoy and go after, and why it's one of the most popular cakes on the planet. If you've ever seen Japanese cheesecakes, they are the lightest, fluffiest, just airy things you've ever seen in your entire life, because they add gelatin and they whip it, and so it comes really, really light and fluffy and kind of jiggly. But this is much more of a New York style, so it's going to be a little bit more dense, and it's just going to have a lot of flavor involved. So we're getting down to the last couple of eggs here. So we got 3 left. There goes 2 left. At this point in time, I'm going to turn my mixer up by 1 notch to the second setting. We're going to add 9th egg and egg number 10. Now we're just going to let that go for half a second. Now, again, now that the eggs are in, we stop. We're going to open it up. And now you can see that the eggs aren't fully incorporated yet. You can still see the whites kind of falling off the edge there. Now, the reason for that is because we haven't obviously kind of beat everything up yet. This still needs to go for a little while. So what we're going to do is we're just going to scrape all these nice cream cheesy bits. We want to get as much of that goodness inside the batter, all the way around, down to the bottom, and scrape it off right onto there. So you can even see the whites of some of the eggs still left there. So we got to let this turn for a little longer. Oh yeah, but that's already looking awesome. So scrape that off, put that down, lock it up, and now we are gently going to put this onto the third setting. Now we're just going to let that whip for half a minute and just kind of let all those egg whites beat themselves up a little bit. While that's happening, we are just going to dip into the freezer and give our butter a real quick turn, because all we're doing is we're just trying to take the real kind of hot edge off of this. Not that it really matters, because we are obviously going to be putting this cake in to cook right away, but we don't want it super warm from there. So that can go back into the fridge for now, and into the freezer. And that is ready to go. So once again, we're going to take our paddle off here. Got to give everything a real good scrape. Get all that delicious yumminess off there. Give our bowl once around, just to make sure that we've got everything kind of up off the bottom. All right, so we can take that bowl off. Now, before we pour this, we're going to do a very important step. We're adding water to our oven. Now, this is probably the most crucial step when making cheesecake outside of actually having a good cheesecake recipe. This is insanely important. This right here is the reason that cheesecake stays moist and doesn't turn into literally a block of cheese. This is the reason. So, you can see the way I have my oven set up with a rack on the bottom, with that skipping the next one, and then a rack in the middle. This water one is going to go right onto the very bottom, and that's where it's going to live the entire time. And it's going to very slowly evaporate. It's going to very slowly add a little bit of steam element into the oven to allow everything to just be very, very nice and moist. And it's going to keep this cake just perfect. So, now it's time to really get ready for this. So I've got a pan that we're going to put our other pan on top of, because this makes it a lot easier to move around. We are going to grab our mixture out of the freezer, as well as a chopstick. I'll let you know why in a minute. We got a spoon. Now we're just going to get this little... Boy, that is very tasty. Now, cheesecake. This is where the magic happens. We're going to start with the batter. Now, very gently, you're going to pour your batter directly in the middle. Just let it seep all the way around. Don't worry about it. Don't panic on it. Just pour it. Now, we're going to pour about 2/3 of our batter into our cake mold. And at this point in time is when we are going to add our flavoring. Now, whatever flavoring agent you're going to use, this is when you would add it, because this is when we can do layers, and this is when we can kind of get it, making sure it comes all the way through the entire cake. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this beautiful nectarine butter, and we're just going to kind of put some lines in here. And we're just going to layer that in, just like so. Snaking all the way around. Oh man, this smells so good. And kind of coming back a little bit there. Got a little bit on top, and that's okay. I'm just going to use my thumb just to get that out of there. because we don't want that to burn. Now, the rest of our mixture, and we're going to do just a little zigzag pattern just to help spread that jam just a little bit. And then we're going to get in there with the chopstick in half a second. So, all of that beautiful cake batter, that mix, that cheesecakey goodness, ooh baby, yeah, is all in there now. That is super ready to go.
Excuse me.
Now we're going to take our chopstick, and any jam that's above the cheesecake line, I'm just going to dip it underneath because I don't want it, oh bless you my dear, I don't want it to burn on top. Now, I'm going to take my chopstick, and all we're going to do is we're going to draw an S line all the way down the cheesecake. Because what that's going to do is that's just going to distribute all of that butter all the way around the cake, just a little bit more. All right, so that's done now. Now, last step already, my goodness. So that's everything, that's the cheesecake. Now all we gotta do is cook it. Now the easy part. So, carefully, very carefully, we're gonna pick our cake up, trying not to shift it around because we don't want that batter to rise up on the sides because we don't want any extra cooking up the sides. Put that in, slide her on down. So I have my oven set at 325 degrees, fully preheated, and we got that water in a couple minutes before we put the cake. I'm going to set a timer for 90 minutes. And we're going to see how it looks after 90 minutes. So, star wipe. Not so much, but sort of star wipe. To the cake that I made earlier. Now it's the same thing, but this one is all done and ready to eat. So there you have it. That right there is the finished product of the cake that we just made. Now, this is also the same jam or the butter that we made earlier. Again, this is just cooled down. This is stuff that I made for simply this purposes because obviously I'm not going to make you wait 90 minutes on stream to watch me finish cooking this cheesecake the whole way. This was cooked at a total of 1 hour and 45 minutes. So it ended up being 15 minutes longer than the 90 minutes that we originally set. Start with 90 minutes and go from there. Check it. When you pull your cheesecake out, you're going to kind of just give it a shake. If you see a lot of movement, 15 minutes more. If you don't, and it has that just firmness to it, like it's just firm to the touch, pull it. Let it sit, let it cool. Now, like I said, we didn't do a really hefty crust. I did this crust exactly the same height as I did on the other one, so we don't have a super, super high crust. But we also don't have a really tall cake either, which is totally okay. This is just going to be packed full of flavor. Now, we're going to cut this guy open and see what we got. Now, the easiest way to cut your cheesecake is to heat your knife under some seriously nice hot water and then let your knife do the work. And we let it just melt that cheesy layer into the crust all the way down. Ooh. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Whoop. Got a little excited there. Okay, here we go. All the way through. Oh. Okay. Are you guys ready? Are you ready for this? Oh. Baby. Yeah. That right there, I can very confidently say is probably one of the nicest cheesecakes I've ever made. I don't think I've ever made a cheesecake actually that has come out that dense. Now, again, the fruit was a little heavy, so it ended up sinking to the bottom. Not a problem. We also have a little bit more that we're going to put on top. So what I'm going to do now is each one of these sides, I'm going to cut into 6 sides. We're going to get 12 pieces out of this cake. I'm going to serve it with just a little bit of the butter right on top, and that's it. That's it, guys. Like, that's cheesecake. It is literally that easy. It is so simple to make this cheesecake. Please make it. Show me. Show me what you've done. If you want to add chocolate to it, in the mixing phase, you can either use cocoa powder, you can add a little bit of chocolate syrup, or you can do a chocolate syrup ribbon where you put the chocolate and then you use your chopstick and you kind of move it around. Sky's the limit with this. The only thing you really have to watch is what you're adding to it. It might change your hydration level, so just be aware of how much liquid you're adding to whatever flavoring you're adding to your cheesecake. But this base will get you so far as baking, as far as cheesecake's concerned. This base is a great place to start. So once again, everybody, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much for coming and joining me. We're on the road to 400 followers. Once we hit there, we're going to be doing a cool giveaway, so please keep an ear to the ground for that. Thank you for joining me on the off day on this Wednesday. Luckily, I had the day off today, and with everything going on tomorrow, we decided not to do a stream, so we did it today. So thank you guys for coming in and joining me and watching me make some delicious cheesecake. I really hope you try the recipe. If you need it again, please hit me up on Twitter. I will happily send it to you. That's it, guys. Thank you so much. I'm Scott. I am the Uncensored Chef. And once again, thank you for joining me in my kitchen tonight. Thank you for coming and watching me have some cheesecake. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you guys later.